There are 4 compositions that you need to know how to play if you're going to do well in Season 12 Apex Legends. This is for ranked, competitive, or even in casual games, and that's part of the reason why this game is so difficult. Not only do you have to learn the movement, the skills, probably harder than any other BR or FPS out there, but then you have to keep up with the meta, which is constantly evolving and probably has changed the most this season specifically, which is why I wanted to make this video, to help people really understand who they should be playing and why these new compositions tend to be working on the new map Stormpoint, and it's really changing the way we see Apex Legends. Let's get into it. Here are the 4 comps you need to know about. Now, I'm a professional caster. I want to start off by saying that, so I get my experience of what these compositions can do at the highest of high levels, watching the guys like Hal you like to watch, but commentating over their play, dissecting it, and bringing it into the broadcast for viewers and people like you to understand and really dissect and add to your own gameplay. Now, the first composition we're going to look at is TSM FTX composition, which includes Ashe, Valkyrie, and Gibraltar. Now, the difference between this composition and a season's past is the Ashe. The Ashe brings a whole new level of mobility that is super vital on the map Stormpoint, and that's why Wraith will be seen less and less this season. Now, Wraith in general being seen less and less is, I think, a good thing for the competitive meta in general, since she's been the most popular character for a while. But let's dissect exactly why Ashe is getting the edge in this pretty standard composition that includes Gibraltar and Valkyrie to support. When it comes to mobility, Wraith is one of the best in the game at being able to take her team places and get there safely, especially when she's in the in-game leader role, which is the character or the player who is going to be on a character that gets into those firefights, scouts, looks for next positions, and takes a little bit of risk in order to help the team know exactly what they need to do next and win those games. Hal likes to play this character, and so Hal has switched from the Wraith to the Ashe for a couple of specific reasons. The main reason being the space required to traverse in Stormpoint. See, Stormpoint is a much bigger map than World's Edge, and the Ashe provides instant translocation, instant burst damage, and instant fleeing capabilities, unlike the Wraith. There's just too much setup time that the Wraith has to take in order to get from point A to point B. And when you consider the fact that Stormpoint isn't just large, it's very high as well, Wraith cannot get up to some of those high in-game locations that would be perfect for a team like TSM, who like to rotate early and find the best spots to sit. Why you should include Ashe over Wraith is probably mostly because of this ultimate phase breach, giving you the ability to, yes, be aggressive onto teams who aren't suspecting it, but also get up to those areas where the height might not be possible for a Wraith to climb up herself, especially with no ability to boost herself up there like an Octane jump pad or a Pathfinder zipline, since those aren't in the meta right now. Another really nice thing that Ashe brings to the table is control and poke damage in her arc snare. This ability has some interesting interactions, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but movement can be canceled when used correctly, allowing it to interrupt and effectively disable people like a Horizon when they're trying to get into their gravity lift. This is a really nice interaction, but mostly will be used to poke enemies who are hiding in their final zone spot and don't want to move or take damage, or at least control an area where maybe there's a corridor and you want to make sure enemies are at least hesitant to walk through it to chase you, and if they do, they're going to pay a penalty and you'll have the upper hand in the next firefight. So Wraith is still a great character, but Ashe takes the cake, mostly because of, yes, her tactical, her passive doing well to support her kit, but her phase breach being a much better movement tool and also allowing aggressiveness or defensiveness or even utility-minded fast-thinking teams to take advantage of spots that might not have been accessible without that Ashe phase breach. Not to mention, she also charges it every 2 minutes versus Wraith's ultimate, which is charged every 3 minutes, a full 33% faster in terms of the ults you'll be able to use throughout the game. So Valkyrie, Gibraltar, Ashe, probably one of the most premier and I would say cookie-cutter legend compositions in Season 12. But you're going to notice Gibraltar and Valkyrie in almost all of these lineups that I'm going to talk about. It's going to be that third legend that really adds spice and a different direction to how you want to play the game. And of course, I'm so excited to mention how Horizon adds to Valkyrie and Gibraltar in this next one. Valkyrie, Gibraltar, and Horizon combine to make a very interesting composition, so much so that we've seen NRG and C9 adopt this in some of the latest tournaments that have been available in the North American scene, and 2 premier teams with premier players all around. Horizon hasn't gotten any buffs, but she's had the perfect opportunity to come back into the season and make a significant, well, maybe a huge change to the momentum of how things have been going. Now, Horizon brings the flair, but why are you going to see Valkyrie and Gibraltar in each one of these lineups before we get on to this third character that really changes this second composition? Well, it's because the Valkyrie has been clearly chosen for her mobility. She brings almost everything you would need for the recon position, and I don't know how much better it can get, especially when you look at new legends coming in. Valkyrie might be in the meta for a long time. She's got vision while she's skydiving, which helps you to land safely, and she can do that while she redeploys. She's got a redeploy that covers more of the map than any other legend and also allows you to, well, with protection from the Gibraltar, safely escape a lot of in-game zones where you might need to just fly up, buy yourself a second, or relocate to a better or even the best spot in the game, considering you have so much height available. Individually, she can fly up to places most other legends that aren't Horizon, that aren't an Ashe using an ultimate, aren't a Loba, and aren't an Octane or a Pathfinder can't get to, and it really gives her that last-minute, last-ditch effort to get away from a team and survive to allow the team who's got that character, the Valkyrie, to really win those final fights, or at least be the last player standing. We've seen it with Verhulst on TSM all the time. The Valkyrie is essentially a recon specialist as well, meaning she can know where the next ring is going to be, which is a crucial part of Apex Legends' competitive dynamics. You're going to see a lot of teams pick up at least one recon legend, so they scan the beacon, see where the second ring goes, and then they'll also be able to know where that ring most likely is going to end and rotate very quickly with the Valkyrie at about 50 seconds with the first circle about to close, her ultimate coming up and allowing them to skyward dive towards a better location. This really just is so hard to compete against, and that's why you'll see Valkyrie in almost every single one of these compositions except one. But the other thing she brings is the poke, the missile swarm. That is just such a good ability. It does 25 easy damage, but if you get hit by a lot of it or multiple players, it can do a ton of damage in terms of a team hiding behind a rock or somewhere that they think is safe. Valkyrie on cooldown can just keep using their resources to use their shield batteries, use their shield cells, and really put them in a bad position when it's time for them to fight or try to get to a next spot when the ring closing in. Gibraltar is what Gibraltar does. He helps himself be in the meta by being such a stable pick, giving the bubble, which if you're in trouble is really the only hold on, let's try this again or let's regroup button in Apex Legends, allowing you a protective shield where players will then have to enter and face a character who takes 15% less damage, doesn't get slowed by bullets, and has a 50 health gun shield as well, so you'll have to get through that before you even get into his damage reduced health pool. Sounds like a lot to deal with, and it is, especially when he can throw his ultimate outside of where he is for a very far distance and affect enemies, forcing them to use their defensive shields and also not move out from cover, buying precious time for his team to relocate and have another plan, or to get downs on enemies that they couldn't necessarily rotate to without exposing themselves. Overall, these two add mobility and safety to a lineup, and they give you a lot of options to play a final circle and to deal with people who might jump in on you in Apex Legends where you might be caught surprised. This is why these two are such great staple picks, and this is why also the Horizon adds another little bit of spice to this, very much like the Ashe in our first composition. Horizon has taken this new season by storm, coming in and being a legend that, yes, has not received any buffs, but hasn't also received any nerfs in a while, and has kind of just sat there while other legends have been introduced and started to change the dynamic of Apex competitive. Horizon has been patiently waiting for her moment, and guess what? It is now. Really, you could talk about the black hole, which is great, and it gets better when there's open space, like in the map of Stormpoint. Her ultimate really allows her to make a mess of teams who are hiding behind maybe one big rock and then a bunch of open sand or water on the backside, because guess what? If you move out from that rock, you're just in clear no man's land and you're going to get downed. But the problem is, if the black hole starts pulling you that way, you've got no cover, you've got nothing to run to, and you are literally a sitting duck for grenades or a teammate that's trying to flank you, or excuse me, an enemy that's trying to flank you and run around and finish you all up. It is a very tough situation to get out of, especially with minimal cover and much open spaces to be taken advantage of. But that's not really why Horizon becomes successful in this meta. It's the high ground. I did a video on this the other day with TSM, FTX, Imperial House, showcasing us how to play Horizon and me breaking down why Horizon's kit is uniquely formulated to be successful on Storm Point. Storm Point deals with so much height that it's a very different map to play. And like you'll see in Counter-Strike, like you'll see in Valorant, like you see even in Halo, certain maps require certain tactics to exceed, and of course exceed expectations, or go away and maybe be less effective than they normally would be on another map. This is where Horizon's gravity lift takes the cake. This ability allows Horizon not only to put herself into a higher position and change the elevation of the fight, grab high ground, or even get up to a high ground location that you couldn't do without a movement ability, since Storm Point honestly has some areas you cannot walk up without completely exposing yourself, especially with high-level play around you, but she also can bring her teammates along as well. Unlike Loba, who uses her translocation ability with her bracelet to take herself somewhere, she can't bring anybody along. And that's where Horizon really, I think, excels, allowing the entire team to take advantage of that gravity lift. Now, obviously, it's not as good as it was before, but it still gets to most of the highest places from the lowest places that you'll need to traverse, even if you're landing antenna. And I think this is really the key for why she's so successful. Not to mention her passive spacewalk allows her to jump from that high ground down to low ground and get the first shot over almost any other player, and even keep her momentum sliding, since she doesn't take any staggering effect like every other legend does when falling from high ground to low ground. That is going to be a big part of final circles in Storm Point, and I think those three reasons are why she fits really nicely into this second composition. Now, it doesn't mean that she's going to be better than the Ashe or the Wraith, and honestly, what she trades for maybe some safety or some aggressiveness that the Ashe might bring, and especially the poke damage with the Ashe tether, she's going to trade for extra mobility, meaning that the Valkyrie has the ability to get up top, and when the Valkyrie can't or the Gibraltar can't, the Horizon will be able to get all three of them up to a higher location, and it really gives them other ways to play in circles that other teams do not have. I think Horizon is also unique because she's a very good in-game leader character, which is why we've seen NRG Sweet play this a little bit. It's a great character for someone to scout, but it's also a pretty good individual legend who has no problem with her ability to have a little bit of extra momentum, jumping from high ground, getting that extra first shot off, and also a lot of tools to delay and change position in case he is in trouble, to really get into those forward positions, scout for his team, make big plays for the squad, and then get back to safety, having a plan of what to do next. You might have thought that was fun, and it's synergized as well. It's one of my favorite compositions to watch, but this third one is a little weird, and that's kind of what makes it special and maybe the most entertaining of them all. The third composition we're talking about today is the Valkyrie, the Ashe, and the Bangalore. Oh, baby, can somebody say movement? Now, obviously, this is a pretty weird squad, especially because it foregoes the Gibraltar to have the Valkyrie and the Ashe, and then bring in a new legend, whereas maybe the Ashe would have been the flex choice for a lot of these other squads. The Bangalore adds something unique to Storm Point, and we know how the Valkyrie and the Ashe work together, but how does the Bangalore add to this composition? Well, it depends on how you like to play. Let's get into why that happens right now. For teams that like to play edge or like to play in these wide open spaces, maybe without cover underneath a building or inside a room, the Bangalore provides something very unique that I don't know if everyone's paid attention to, especially in North America. We already know Bangalore can work in Europe and has taken third place in actually the biggest tournament in EMEA that's almost ever happened in Apex Legends, played by Shiv FPS, with a heroic play to almost stall the tournament in basically overtime and force another game. But even though it didn't quite happen, we all realized that this was a real pick, and North America has started to adapt it. Team Intel, which actually placed fourth in this Super League Arena tournament I casted just a week ago, was running this composition and playing the outskirts really, really well, doing a couple of things with Bangalore I think people misunderestimated due to the value of what she brings to Storm Point. Number one, Bangalore's passive double time is really underrated. Although it's just a feel-good movement thing like Horizon's passive spacewalk, which just makes playing her feel a lot more easy, less punishing, it does have a unique benefit in the fact that there's a lot of rotations that need to happen over wide open spaces in this new map. And what's better than a character who, even if she's not hit, but getting shot at or near the vicinity of, moves 30% faster. This is huge, but it also means that even if she's moving faster, she's got to sometimes make mobile cover for her squad to not be exposed in those long journeys. And hey, Ashe and Valkyrie aren't as exactly fast as Bangalore either. that's where the smokes come into play. In Stormpoint, where there isn't a lot of natural cover, Bangalore has the ability to make her own, and this is no more important in this map, whereas in World's Edge, there is a ton of cover in almost every area you'll be fighting in in-game. In Stormpoint, there is almost no cover in a lot of in-game circles that we've seen, a lot of wide open beaches and areas where you're just stuck. And that's where Bangalore can make her own cover with the smokes. The ability to obscure vision, hide yourself, or at least create a pause. Unlike where the Gibraltar can throw that shield up and let you know exactly when that's going to go down, Bangalore can keep her team smoked with 2 refills on the charge for quite a while and allow herself to be less vulnerable and her team as they're traversing some of these wide open spaces. The ultimate also brings another level of control that I think in Stormpoint actually has some benefits. I mean, considering the fact that it's such a big ultimate, Rolling Thunder covers quite a large distance, and again, being a little bit more out in the open, teams are a little bit more exposed per usual. I think this actually has better value here than some of the more cavernous or building-laden areas that we see in World's Edge or even Kings Canyon. This team synergizes really well because each character has some form of movement, and so 3 strong individual players with an Ashe, a Valkyrie, and of course a Bangalore can wreak havoc on a team who maybe wants to play a little more stationary and is relying on perfect teamwork. I think each one of these legends might be some of the best 1v1 legends in the game, considering their options to escape, to be aggressive, and of course to not get hit, which is the key to winning a fight. Well, that and hitting your bullets, of course. But you guys get the point. Each one of these legends can kind of survive on their own and bring something unique to the table that isn't quite often seen in the meta. This is probably the weirdest comp that you're going to see, considering you're not playing with a traditional tank, but hey, this used to be the way Apex Legends was played. Whereas you did have a defensive character in Wattson, Pathfinder, and Wraith, you never really had a tank character that really could just shut it down with these big shields and was hard to take down. In fact, Wattson had a penalty for actually taking more damage than other legends because she had such a small hitbox. So this kind of brings back a little bit of nostalgia to me, where there is a little bit more free-flowing, more aggressive, more open style of Apex Legends than we see traditionally. And I think if you have that more kind of aggressive but maybe independent style as a team, this may work for you. But I don't think it's going to work more than this one legend coming in to the established Valkyrie Gibraltar stability lineup. I believe we've seen something new here that could transform the way we view an entire season and a character who has not found his place in the meta ever. That's Fuse, coming in as our 4th squad alongside Valkyrie and Gibraltar. Now, you will be surprised that the team playing Fuse didn't just come in 10th or 9th, 7th, 4th, or 3rd. They came in 2nd place in the Super League finals that we covered a couple weeks ago, just behind TSM FTX, which should be shocking to you. It was shocking to me, and it showcased why we were wrong about Fuse, not all along, but at least this season. Now, I know a lot of people give credit to some content creators, rank grinders, and streamers for bringing Fuse into the light, like Matchin, and I'm not saying that that didn't do it, but I am saying that there's a unique value in Stormpoint and Fuse that has really made it such a synergistic pick, very much like Horizon. Number 1, Fuse has control, and he's got poke damage galore. The ability for Fuse to wreak havoc on a team that's stationary yet far away is really unparalleled in our meta, especially because of Fuse's passive. The ability to shoot grenades and shoot his knuckle cluster farther and more accurately than any other legend makes a big difference on a map that is farther and requires much more accuracy for ordnances than any other map. The synergy is there, obviously, but how do you take advantage of a big fire ring, the ultimate that has always been lackluster? Teams are rarely ever caught out because they're on top of a building, inside a building, or behind something that it just really doesn't allow them to get pressured or pushed when they get hit by that big ring of fire. There are 3 main components as to what Stormpoint brings specifically to Fuse to allow his ultimate to be successful. 1, the wide open spaces that we've been talking about all along. Less area for cover means more possibility to be trapped in a terrible position on a rotation or in an in-game circle by that ring of fire. Now, when you add a Valkyrie who can add her missile swarm, you add a Fuse who could throw grenades faster, more effectively, and more accurately, and can throw a Knuckle Cluster, you really can take advantage of a team and really put them in a bad position if you catch them on the move. 2, the ability to be aggressive in poke, when sometimes in a map that's far away, that's your only way to cause pressure onto a team, is really, really unique for Fuse. He has the same ability to impact somebody with a G7 Scout, a 30-30 repeater, or heck, a Kraber if he has it, like every other player, but not every other player or legend has the ability to have 2 Knuckle Clusters that persist for so long and do so much nice damage over the course of time to really set up a bad endgame and a lot of resources wasted by a team just trying to survive before they have to take their final fight. And number 3, it forces a terrible trade of abilities. What do I mean by that? If a Fuse Knuckle Cluster goes onto the Gibraltar team with Valkyrie and let's say an Ashe, you sometimes have to consider, do we need to bubble here in order to not take too much damage and be an easy target to get pushed on? Now, that happens once, you bubble. Then the Knuckle Cluster comes back again and you don't have bubble, meaning that bubble was probably a very big resource that that team needed, and the Fuse didn't really need to have his Knuckle Cluster. It was just easy to kind of force your big ability. And now they are in a better position to push since they've got their Gibraltar bubble and the Fuse has forced the other team to not have theirs. This creates a very tough situation for teams who have low ground against the Fuse and are constantly being berated by that damage that he brings, saying, do we defend here? Do we go all in? Do we just eat this damage? Let them build up Evo shields, let them waste our resources and just try to hit shield batteries? Hopefully they don't push us when they see our shields crack. It creates a very tough situation. And one of the reasons it's tough is that no one has had to really play against it at a high level for too long. So it's a new composition, but it's one of the reasons it's working. And this map is uniquely situated to allow Fuse to excel at everything that he does great, which is do a lot of blowing up in a lot of wide open spaces. I feel like that's the theme for today, wide open spaces. So that's the 4 compositions that are coming up in Season 12. Let me know what you think about the video. Make sure to comment down below. Let's have a discussion about these legends and anyone you think I might have missed. Also, leave a like on the video and subscribe. We're on the road to 400,000. I'd love for you to be with me on that one. As always, never give up, never stop gaming. I'll see you guys next time.